Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Ravi, and you're listening to the Why Not IAM podcast. In this episode of the Why Not IAM podcast, we have with us a very special guest, Pulkit Malik. He is currently working at HCL Tech as a pre-sales manager. He has really good experience in the identity and access management space. His technical expertise is unmatched. He really has a great communication skill, his business acumen, and the way he thinks about what's coming in next in the future around identity and access management, how to work with your sales skills with the customers, how do you solve the customer problem, how do you manage the entire project. It makes him a complete package of pre-sales manager or an architect. He has worked in various domains and in different industries. I really enjoyed talking to him. He is a very positive person. And in my view, whoever in has been invited or has accepted the invitation to come and share their knowledge in this podcast has become a local hero in our IM world by default because of two reasons. First, he or she has contributed to their respective organizations for a good number of years, and most important, has agreed to share whatever small, big contributions that they have done on this forum, which will eventually help shape young minds across the globe. So, thank you in advance again to everyone who has contributed so far and who will be helping us in the Why Not IM series. So, this episode is broken down into two parts. I do that primarily so that all my viewers and listeners can get some good amount of time to absorb the knowledge that they have got from the first episode, from the first part. Try to have a conversation with their colleagues, with their peers, and then come and listen to the part two. In this first part, I have tried to debunk some of the myths around pre-sales, like are pre-sales and sales same domain, or do they have to work on targets? Who can aspire to be a pre-sales architect or a consultant or a manager? And most important, what are the skills that they would need? And what are the skills that they are required to have before applying or before joining in as a pre-sales. And this episode is really, really helpful for all the MBA aspirants who are completing their post-graduation or who are even planning for a post-graduation. This is a really good option for them. So this is again an effort from the community to spread awareness across India and abroad around how IM is going to be a career in future, which can offer significant jobs in the market. So without further ado, let's begin the podcast with Pulkit Malik.
Welcome to India's first identity podcast. Why not IAM?
Hello, everyone. In today's episode, we have Pulkit, who is the Deputy Manager, IM Pre-Sales in HCL Tech. Hey, hi, Pulkit. How are you?
Hi Ravi, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. And I really want to thank you for joining us in today's episode of the journey of a pre-sales manager or engineer. And I would really want your expertise to be shared with all our viewers so that they can carve their way into becoming some really good pre-sales engineers and managers in the future.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be here on this podcast with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's dive into some of the misconceptions. I really want to understand what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you have or that you have heard in your industry.
So, Ravi, first of all, pre-sales is very specific to IT. Outside of IT, people do not know what exactly pre-sale. Normal people, they have to, take some wild guess. They assume that this is sales. I think that's a big misconception. Partly, yes, I would say that but this is like a sales aligned function in this. We work with customers, we respond to certain bids and do probably some proactive business generations with the customer. This lies more at a techno sales point. I would say
Okay.
50 of this would be having technical discussions with the customer. Remaining around 40 might be sales or commercial oriented.
Okay, so again, the biggest misconception that you have heard is, that you've seen, right? Even I felt earlier that sales and pre-sales are quite the same, but yeah, thank you for clarifying it for us and for all our viewers and listeners. So, we did discuss last time, Pulkit, where you helped me walk through across your journey. So, can you help us, our viewers, give a brief walkthrough about your journey? How did IAM happen to you? Like, how did you get introduced into this exciting world of identity and access management?
Sure, Ravi. Okay, Ravi, I would trace it back to my school days because again, as I said, that this is like a techno sales kind of a profile. So the technical orientation towards IT in general that started. It started building in me during my school days. I was very much interested in technology when I was doing my 10th or 11th. I made it a clear point that I'll be pursuing engineering in the field of computer science or IT. After 12th, I started appearing for all these engineering entrance exams and I got myself in a decent engineering college.
Mm-hmm.
But once I joined the engineering, while it was really good at creating sort of a technical base for the IT industry, towards the latter half of my engineering, I started realizing that I want to understand a bit more of how technology actually benefits the end customer.
Okay.
I always had a strong belief that if any organization is procuring certain kind of product, they are paying for their licenses, and all organizations they work mostly for some financial incentive. I'm talking of big, large enterprises, those commercial businesses. For them, if they are making any IT investment and they're not getting the ROI in terms of the commercial benefit, the commercial value, they might not really go ahead with any kind of solution for that. So that's where I understood that probably I need to undergo management education where I get to understand the commercial side of the business as well.
Okay. Okay.
Ever since my last year of engineering, I started actively preparing for these management entrance exams like CAT and all. It took me a couple of times to successfully crack the CAT exam. And in between, I did work for about 1 year in a local manufacturing firm based in Delhi only. I was a part of their IT department, but yes, my end goal was to get into a good management institute where
Okay.
I can understand the commercial aspects of doing business with any customer. Then
Mhm.
during my MBA, I would be very honest, I did not really specialize in marketing initially because I wanted to know all different aspects of any organization. So I studied a bit of HR, a bit of strategy, some finance as well. I started understanding that my interests lie towards sales and marketing.
Okay. Okay.
And in fact, I was very fortunate enough that there were a couple of IT electives that we could undertake to understand that how businesses can leverage IT solutions for their business benefit.
So one thing I would like
Yeah.
to stop you here for a question. When you say electives, right?
Yeah.
So people who are planning to get into MBA or people who are already into MBA, right?
Yeah.
What does this elective mean and how can someone choose the right elective so that they can initially plan itself to get into the world of cyber or IAM?
Ravi, first of all, the electives, I believe that most of the leading management institutes, they offer some sort of IT related subjects that the students can opt for.
Okay.
I remember the couple of electives that I took during my MBA. One was, I forgot the name of the exact subject, but it was more tailored towards how cloud computing can basically benefit organizations. So over there, we are not really diving deep into the technical aspect of cloud, but we were taught to evaluate all the various cloud offerings, AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, how we can evaluate these cloud offerings and the benefits that they offer in terms of commercial value.
Okay.
So that was one. Another was this elective, you can say that it's a bit of sales and IT. So there was an elective for business development in IT where we got a very high level understanding of how the bidding process in IT services firms, how does that work?
Okay.
These couple of electives, they probably helped me a bit. And during my MBA, I was also actively participating in various case studies and business competitions. So a
Mhm.
couple of the competitions that I did participate in was there were some case studies about some IT companies. There were some case studies about any organization trying to make an investment into IT solution. So it was not so those case study competitions were not that really technical. They were more focused on the commercial aspect of these transactions. But they gave me a good insight in the field of IT. So during my final year, when the companies were coming for replacements, I actively applied for almost all the IT companies that came to my campus. And I was fortunate enough that HCL Tech, they came to my campus specifically looking for identity and access management pre-sale folks.
Okay. Okay.
So my initial start was through my campus placement in my current organization, HCL Technologies.
Okay.
So
And
I've
one
I've
thing,
been yep.
sorry to interrupt in between.
Sure.
One thing, when you said you were participating in some of the competitions which
Yeah.
had case studies.
Yeah.
So for all our listeners and viewers and people who are aspiring to get into the field or even just general suggestions or guidance, how can someone participate in these kind of competitions?
Ravi, so first of all, in the field of management education, finding IT related competition that becomes a bit tough. Most of the competitions they will be around FMCG sales or finance or HR. But what I would suggest to anyone who is pursuing management education, or I think people should, depending on their interests, they should apply to as many competitions as possible. So there are a few
Okay.
websites like Dare to Compete, I remember, and there are a couple of other websites also that they display all the competitions that are being planned across the nation. You can register through those websites, and sometimes what happens is that all these big businesses they host their own competitions. So, like one, I do remember that Airtel hosts some business competitions of their own. Some banks, like Yes Bank, they used to host certain business case studies competition. And fortunately for me, I enrolled in one such competition from the Yes Bank, and it was a case study based competition. Where the case study was about some joint venture between two software product vendors, and that's where, as part of our case study response, we had to devise the go to market strategy for these two big software giants coming together and creating a single common product portfolio. So that one particular
Okay.
competition, maybe it was my luck, but it helped me provide a good deep dive into the world of IT, at least from a software standpoint.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we say that was the first time you got introduced into thinking about how IT might work because of the research that you did throughout the case study?
Yes, how marketing would work. It was my first experience with that.
Okay. So then after you got selected, if we
Yep.
move forward, when you got selected with HCL Tech, I think that was your first company, right? Where
Yep.
you were working. Okay. So if I would want to summarize, you did your B, BTech, and then you did your MBA,
Yep.
and then you got selected for HCL Tech. How was the journey there in HCL Tech?
I did work between my BE and MBA, but that was not really related to the current field of work that I am. But specifically talking about my journey in HCL Tech, I've been entirely in the field of identity and access management pre-sales only. HCL Tech came to our campus for campus placements, specifically for the profile of senior management trainee in identity access management pre-sales.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be around 5 years. And my introduction, I would say, is that I came from a technical background, but my educational background and even my previous work experience, it was not really related to identity and access management.
Okay.
I had an overview about cybersecurity, but for identity and access management, I'll be very honest. The first time I heard of this phrase was when HCL came to our campus for this profile and
Okay.
when we got the chance to apply. I believe that 5 to 6 years back, at least the normal janta, they did not know about identity and access
Obviously.
management.
Agreed. Right.
Yeah.
And you did not have resources also, right? Back then. So if you see 5, 6 years ago, when I wanted to learn a new, the only thing you had was just go through the 300, 400 pages of documentation.
Correct.
Nothing more.
Correct.
So I
Yeah.
can current definitely relate to what you might have gone. And now that brings me to the next question is definitely you have been doing really well in your current role, right? So what resources that you use on a day-to-day basis or that has helped you? What are the different references do you go about from a video or from a documentation perspective in order to make relevant to the market?
Ravi, I would say that the best resource for learning is the human element, the human resource.
Hmm.
So, like I'll tell you, when I joined over here, there were these resources that were already there, but I needed someone to help me guide through these resources. For a fresher, if someone starts to read about a single sign on,
Uh-huh.
Microsoft has a very good documentation about their identity products and their single sign on being one of the market leading solutions.
Hmm.
If I start to read about single sign-on, which is, I would say SSO is like very important in the identity space, but from a learning standpoint, it's one of the basis of from where you can start your education about identity. But if someone who's not aware of this entire field, even studying about SSO will be a huge task.
Absolutely, yes. Because
You
there are
know,
so many things, right, in SSO itself.
correct,
The-
correct. The best kind of a resource, at least if you're starting your career journey in this domain, is to find a buddy or a mentor who can help you guide at least initially on the technical aspect of it.
Hmm.
Talk to people, go to your seniors, discuss about all of this, and seek some recommendations from them.
Hmm.
From now coming to documentation or resources, I would say, see, identity as a domain, it has what I think 5 to 6 different subdomains, right?
Agreed. Yeah. You have
Your
the identity.
identity governance will be different.
Yes.
Authentication side is different. Consumer identity you have, and while from an implementation or delivery standpoint, we have separate privileged access management people. But from a pre-sales standpoint, when you're working in pre-sales, especially in identity and access management, you will be required to have knowledge about privileged access also. So
Absolutely.
your solutions like CyberArk, Beyond Trust, I would suggest is that, probably someone should start through reading the Microsoft documentation. Microsoft has their extensive certification documentation in identity. They can
Okay.
start over there. On a privileged access standpoint, one can start with the documentation, and there are a couple of small free certifications that are there on the CyberArk's website.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I am not able to recall what is the base level certification. I think they have a certification that provides at least a baseline on the world of privileged access.
Okay. Definitely pin down all
Yeah,
the links
yeah,
in the description section for all our viewers and listeners.
yeah.
They can definitely use that references.
Yeah, these are a couple. And specifically in the field of identity governance, if you want to have a view of what exactly is identity governance, I think even SailPoint and Savient, those two being the market leaders, they also provide some small free certification.
Yes.
Yeah, from an identity governance standpoint, anyone can start with that.
Okay. And I had Krish as a guest in one of our shows, right? He's one of the SailPoint expert. And
Okay.
even he did highlight the point that SailPoint has opened up their university now
Right.
and made it available to everyone. So it is a really good move by companies like SailPoint to kind of make resources available because anyways, we have so much scarcity in terms of the resources, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So this will definitely help groom the upcoming resources, whether if they are a budding engineer, architect, pre-sales, anyone, right? It
right.
simply helps them.
Right.
Now, अभी हो गया मतलब आपने cover कर लिया सारा ये चीज in terms of books and knowledge. Can we dive into the second question and the other question?
Yep, sure.
Okay. So now that people have clarity around how your journey was, how MBA helped you get into IAM, and then some of the kind of queries and then some of the resources that they can use in order to be an expert in this field. How does the day to day look like in your role as a pre-sales or pre-sales manager? How does the day of a pre-sales manager look like?
See, day to day, it depends on the level of experience that you have. I'll start by describing what my day to day activities look like when I first joined over here. See, for the first 4 to 5 months, as I said, I did not have any prior exposure in the
Mhm.
field of identity and access management. And even pre sales, I had not done before. Mostly, at least for the initial 4 to 6 months, it was a lot of training, self enablement, and talking
Mhm.
to senior team members and getting some guidance from them. I used to do some sort of self study, and while we did have a formal training. Some senior members of the team, they used to take up certain session, talk
Okay.
about certain technologies. So for the first 4 to 6 months, it was a good deal of training, be it the trainings offered within the organization, self-enablement. And then I used to pester a couple of senior team members
Okay.
a lot with a whole lot of doubts. So
Mm.
I used those initial few months for this. Then slowly and gradually, I started shadowing people. By shadowing, I mean that if someone in the team is responding to certain bid, then you know what they are doing. Then gradually, those senior members, they started providing me bits and pieces of work. It could be like, just for the audience, bids, I would say there are largely of three different types. One is that the customer is looking for just consultation from us, where the customer wants us to prepare a proposal for a consultation of probably 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever time frame it is. Here, you're not doing any changes in the customer's environment. Second type is when the customer is looking for implementing some new tool or some major project in a tool that they have invested in. Third type is where the customer has the tools, but they are looking for like support proposal, where the customer has all these tools available, but they are looking for skilled people who can help them on a daily basis by handling various tickets and simultaneously making their solutions stay up to date.
If I would want to summarize this for the audience, there are three types of bids or services that
Yeah.
you would generally go and offer. Right.
Right.
First
Right.
one is advisory.
Yep.
Second one is implementation if they do
Yep.
not have a solution. Third is support and business as usual.
Yes, mostly yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so initially, since consulting and implementation bids are a bit more difficult, I would say, on the technical aspect, we used to get mostly the support bids. In support, right, you have to analyze the customer's past data. You'll get an opportunity to ask a few questions to the customer and analyze all the data, be it the documentation that the customer has given, or sometimes the customers they also give your Excel sheets that is filled with last 6 months or last 1 year worth of ticket data. So that
Okay.
kind of analysis I used to do. And then any standard RFP procedure, right? The customer gives us a deadline for the first draft of the commercial as well as technical proposal, drafting that, and then the customer might want to have a couple of rounds of discussion with you and then finalize on the final set of vendors among whom the customer will probably select one or two for the entire piece of work. So what used to happen was that it was a lot of, at least on the initial level, it used to be a whole lot of analysis, going through the documentation, running through the Excel sheets, generating graphs, and basically analyzing all the data that the customer has given. We used to devise the technical as well as the commercial solution.
Okay.
That means ascertaining the exact technical scope of work, determining how much effort will this particular scope of work entail, and accordingly drafting the commercial proposal. That means devising the pricing for that particular scope of work, as well as creating an overall presentation deck for the customer, where we talk about the kind of capabilities that our services will bring in, how we will select the team, how will the proposed team function, and then talking about the commercial aspect of it.
Okay. So probably there are 3 to 4 steps overall involved, right? Which we'll definitely go in detail in our further discussion. Now, as you mentioned about a lot of processes, right, around
Yep.
the different steps that you would go, I would like to understand what are some of the skills that is required to work day in day out in pre-sales. Can you name the top 3 sales skills that you would need to really do good in pre-sales?
See, top three skills. First of all, I would say that you need to have a good understanding of the technology that you are working with.
Okay.
Even if you are coming from a management education background, the customer does not know that you have done an MBA. The customer will only be talking to you about how that particular technology will, or that particular technology or the services that you are proposing to the customer, how they will help them. Actually, only interested in that.
Okay.
So you need to have a full understanding of the technology domain that you're working in. So that's one thing. Second thing is, I would say that ultimately, if a customer is making any investment in the technology, I believe that the customer is not necessarily making that investment in the technical side of it. The customer is looking for a solution, and more often than not, that solution is tied to a commercial problem.
A business
Like,
problem
yes,
or a business value that they want to bring with that
correct.
solution,
Correct.
right?
I'll take an example, right? An organization wants to have compliance with PCI DSS, SOX, or GDPR compliance. A big driver of that compliance would be that there is a good deal of commercial aspect associated with these compliances. Insurance companies, in case of any cyber breach in the customer's environment, the cyber insurance, those companies, they compensate the customer for that.
Okay.
If you are complying to all these compliances, the more robust your cybersecurity is, your insurance premiums on those cyber insurances, they will be quite low. Secondly, all these local legislations, your GDPR, SOX compliance, PCI DSS, if a breach happens and the local government does an audit of that breach and they find out that the company is not in compliance with PCI DSS, SOX, or GDPR, a hefty fine is imposed on them.
Absolutely.
These organizations, they want to avoid those millions of dollars of fine.
Yeah.
So that's also a big reason why the customer will actually invest in technology or your services. And
So
another
second
thing,
would be to basically understand the customer needs. That would be one
correct.
of the skills.
Yes. Understanding the customer needs, understanding the business domain and how your services or your technology will impact the customer will benefit them, I would say. Depends on the industry that they are working in. It depends on the country that they are operating out of. So you need to have a good understanding of the customer's business operations also.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. So it also depends on the, when you say customer and the geographic location, right? I think one of the way in which it can help us determine or know a customer is, say, for example, a customer belongs to UK or
Yep.
Europe.
Yeah.
By default, that customer would have to comply with GDPR. Similarly, if it's a healthcare or
Yep.
a payment gateway, you have PCI DSS compliant. So
Correct.
eventually that would help you tag to one of the business problem would be compliance. And for what
Yes.
compliance, you have already this PCI DSS or GDPR as one of the compliance. So
Yep.
in general, it might give you idea that buying a solution, first thing is to get rid of this compliance or to cover.
Right. And one thing that I would like to add over here, you need to be good in working with people.
Collaboration.
Yes, collaboration, collaborating with the customer and collaborating even with the internal teams. Because I'll take one more example. Many a times that the customer is not coming to an IT services provider just for identity and access management.
Absolutely.
They may have a larger cybersecurity requirement. They may have some networking requirement. So these are like total outsourcing bids where, for one particular bid response, multiple teams are coming together and working with each other. There's going to be a good deal of cross collaboration with these teams. And when you're devising the solution, you will also probably want to get it reviewed internally with some of the technical folks who are actually working in that line of business. So you need to have a good collaboration with them also. Talking to the technical people who deliver these services day in and day out, understanding their concerns, making them understand your concerns, it's a very crucial aspect of this job.
Okay. So to summarize this, you have domain knowledge, customer knowledge, and then collaboration
Yes.
with customer or with your internal stakeholders or internal team members, across team members is really important.
Yes. Yes.
Now, if we move on to the qualifications, right? Yes, we did talk about your journey of getting into IAM through MBA, but what are some of the other qualifications or skill set people may bring in to get a job into pre-sales?
I can talk about specifically this identity access management domain. I'll tell you.
Can someone with a core technical knowledge, an architect or engineer,
Yep.
can they come in, right? Or uske baad they can add these management knowledge, business knowledge, and then be successful. So this is the overall gist of what we want to cover here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I've worked with a lot of identity pre-sales folks in last 5 years. Many of the experienced folks, I know quite a few people who have worked in delivery for 10 years or 15 years, and then they have transitioned to pre-sales. So yes, in fact, I would say that if you're coming with the delivery experience, then you have a good grasp on the technical side of it.
Okay. So service
If
delivery manager
yes,
or
yes,
a service manager,
yes.
or even I think technical leads who kind of deal with service delivery and all
Yes.
can also easily transition into pre-sales.
Yes, they can transition into pre-sales, and provided that they either have or develop the customer understanding of the customer business and understanding of the real underlying need.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to jump into another topic around customers, right? When you talk about customers, what organizations, right, require a pre-sales role? Because I see a lot of the product companies do not have pre-sales as a
Yep.
hierarchy itself. So can you give all of us a little bit overview of the hierarchy in organizations that require pre-sales?
Pre-sales, dominantly, I would say that this is a profile mostly in the services, IT services industry. But I also see in some product organizations, they have pre-sales engineers. The job profiles are, while there is an overlap, but I believe that there's a good deal of difference. There are some organizations where they keep pre-sales engineers, but for those pre-sales engineers, the job profile is largely towards giving technical demos to the customer, demonstrating their technology. Whereas I work on the services side, IT services side of pre-sale. So here again, I just describe here while the technological aspect is there, but it deals with a good deal of commercial aspect.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So again, to summarize, pre-sales largely I see the pre-sales profile in the IT services side, but yeah, there are a few product companies that I know they have their own pre-sales engineers also.
Okay. Okay. And Like also thinking from a customer perspective, right? So if I am an organization, and I believe any organization, right, which whether
Yep.
it's service based or a retail or pharmaceutical organization or any organization in any field they are, currently I see every organization need IAM as one of the function,
Yep.
because the core of IAM is identity and users, and any
Right.
organization who has a
Right.
user would need IAM to manage them.
Correct.
Now, if in 2024, if an organization is planning to implement an IAM,
Hmm.
what would be some of the key things that you would want them to be prepared before they even get in touch with a consultancy or any organization where they want to start doing this advisory or implementation services?
See, Ravi, it depends because I believe that every organization is at certain level of maturity. Okay.
Mm.
We would need to understand what level of maturity that they currently are at. Like I'll take a technical example of, let's say, taking identity governance. Okay.
Let's say an example of a company
Yep.
where they have some legacy system, right? Like a
Hmm.
lot of the companies already have a legacy tool or
Correct.
homegrown solutions to manage their
Correct.
IAM. Now
Correct.
they, one of the challenges that I see is they are not able to keep up with the adapting situations,
Hmm.
the growing threats.
Hmm.
Now, if they plan to integrate a SaaS solution, right?
Hmm.
Basically for SSO, just to make sure that they have single sign-on in place.
Correct.
What would be some of the things that they should prepare first before even giving or getting in touch with a service-based company or a consultancy?
Okay. But the first thing that they need to prepare is, many a times I've seen that sometimes the customers, they come up with the requirement that they want to implement a certain type of a solution, but they themselves do not have a ready inventory of all the IT assets, all the applications, all the infrastructure setup that they currently have. Many a times we may go to the customer and ask certain questions, but the customer, they are themselves not really aware of how exactly the services for these things are currently done, because it might be because they have the solutions but they don't have a proper documentation for that.
Absolutely.
Many organizations, like I'll take this example of JML or user lifecycle management.
Mhm.
Okay, a customer might not be having any solution. That's perfectly okay. If you don't have documented set of processes and procedures that are actually followed anytime a new user joins or anytime a new an employee exits the organization, without having the proper SOPs in place for these processes, any implementation will not be fully successful.
Mm.
Because when we are implementing these kind of solutions, mostly it's more of a process of automation, especially on the identity governance side of it.
Okay.
Even on SSO side, I would say you need to have a clear understanding as to why you really need an SSO solution.
Yes.
For many organizations, it could be PCIDSS, because be it any industry domain or any geography, they are always having financial transactions. For
Mm.
one organization, it might be enhanced compliance to PCIDSS. For one organization, it might be user productivity. The typical use case that we say, if your user is having 10 applications, then he or she does not need to remember all those 10 passwords and stuff
Mm.
like that. But yeah, if you're planning to undergo any sort of journey, your real need should be very clear as to what you really want out of it. Like
So,
many a times I've seen that the customers, they say that they want an SSO implementation, but when we go into their environment, their requirements come for more of a privileged access
okay.
solution. Yeah. And one more thing, Avi, I before closing this off, I would also want to add over here is that involve all the stakeholders. Again, I am taking a technical example. One particular area of privileged access is EPM, endpoint privilege management, where you can say it deals in privileged access control, but it also deals in end user productivity. So many a times in many organizations, I've seen that this one particular functionality, both the CISO as well as the end user services head, they are interested in. And at times it also does happen is that when one particular technology is of interest for two different departments, it there might be sort of a situation where those two departments are not in line with each other when it comes to actual requirement. So
Mhm. Yeah.
having a full inclusion of all the key stakeholders before undergoing any implementation or any identity journey, that's key.
Okay. Okay. This was really insightful, Pulkit. So, just to summarize this for all our audience, the first thing an organization who's planning to implement an IAM solution can do is identify all their assets and inventories and applications, servers, computers, everything, right? From a
Yep.
user device perspective. Second is make a list of the business case that they are trying to solve. What is the problem statement that they are trying to solve for these set of assets and inventories? And once both have been decided, the third is to make sure that you get buy-in from all the stakeholders in various departments, including all the leadership, and not do anything in silos. And I was just reading one of the Gartner's recommendation, and they do also mention one of the thing is, even if we are planning to move towards an identity first strategy, one thing is to make sure to involve all the stakeholders. That is one of the 10 points that they have also mentioned. And yes, you have really added this really good point, because most of the time we do see things are happening at a scale and then you don't have a sponsorship, right, from the executive level of different department. Eventually, as a cybersecurity leader or any leader who's managing the entire cybersecurity or IAM, the only goal is to protect the assets and inventories of different stakeholders or different leaders. And that's the only thing that we are doing. So it's very important to make sure that we are involving everyone, letting them know what is going to happen, how the process would go in, what are the steps involved, the duration. I think that will build trust, and then it makes the implementation simpler also. Correct. Yeah. So moving on to one of the questions around the whole career series that we are currently talking in is, in 2024, if you want to hire a pre-sales engineer or a pre-sales lead, what are some of the qualities that you would look for? And if someone is coming in with a resume, which resume would get selected and which would get rejected?
So, Ravi, here I do have a point of view because I've worked with a whole lot of identity pre-sales professionals, and it might be surprising to you, but some of the professionals that I've worked with, well, they may be coming from management experience, but before pursuing their MBA, they had done undergraduation in different fields, BCom, BSc, whatever. And I have seen that these people, they took all the pains, learn the technical side of it, and even the commercial side of what we do. And right here, they are providing immense value. The kind of proposals and the kind of expertise that they are showing, it is really commendable. So rather than a resume, I would say that this boils down at the level of the interview. If you're willing to show that commitment, right, that there will be a whole lot of challenges, or there will be challenges from the customers, there will be learning challenges, whatever it is. If you're willing to show that you're going to accept all those challenges and tackle them, I think you'll be able to do wonders.
Okay.
But just from a resume standpoint, I would say that if a person has prior IT experience and they are able to show that they have that understanding of the customer mindset through their resume, that will be a big plus.
Okay. In short, anyone who have prior experience in IT and definitely adds skills around pre-sales, knowing the customers, the key 3-4 things that we talk, right?
Yeah.
Domain knowledge, even if they learn it externally, training platforms and then some documentations, right? They will be fit enough to apply for these kind of jobs, because eventually it is the passion and the zeal to take that skill set forward that matters the most.
Correct.
And now, let me just see. I think I just have one question on this whole career thing, which was okay. So I think I'll just ask one more question and then we can move into more on the technical deep dive. So if someone was to plan for, or any MBA grads, right, and post grad currently preparing for MBA, what would be a suggestion for them to get into IAM and cybersecurity as a domain in pre-sales? 3 tips for them.
If they want to get into cybersecurity or IAM as a domain, again, the first step will be demonstrate your ability to grasp the real business need of the customer. If you're able to demonstrate that, you can work on that through participating in different college competitions. That's one particular way. First thing is that you need to have a decent understanding of the business world around you. Okay, because once you're coming into pre-sales, one day you might be dealing with a life sciences healthcare customer, another day you might be dealing with some banking institution, another day you might be dealing with some government organization. Try to have a good working knowledge of the business world around you, and then tie this with cyber security and some understanding of the cybersecurity laws and legislations around the globe. You can start by studying about SOX compliance, GDPR compliance, good DSS, at least a high level knowledge on what these compliances entail, and globally how governments are enforcing this sort of compliance. So start developing an understanding around that. Third thing is be of this mindset. And this is something that one of my marketing professors in my MBA college, she told to the entire class basically. This was not specific to IT. She said that many a times people who do management education, they have this understanding that, oh, we have done a management education, now we don't need to learn anything else.
Mm.
So what she used to say to all of us is that use your management education as a springboard, but nothing else. Don't have this mindset that I've done a management education, and if you're coming into the field of IT, that you do not need to have a deep technical knowledge. For you to succeed, you will need to have that mindset of learning continuously. I've been in this profile for 5 years, and I would say, if not every day, every week, every 2 weeks, I'm learning something new,
Absolutely.
because
I
the
cannot agree
things
more.
that were dominant 3 years before the start of COVID, now the field of identity also has changed quite a lot. And even going forward next 3 years, some of the technologies that we are currently working with, they may go obsolete, and new technologies, new vendors may come in. So you need to have a full understanding. For that, continuous learning is the only way.
Absolutely. I cannot agree less on what you just said because things have drastically changed, right, in the world of cybersecurity or IAM, and it will evolve. I
Yep.
would say if someone is currently planning to get into the field of identity and access management, I'm not talking about the broader cybersecurity because there are multiple domains. IAM alone, that person is all set for the next 15 years or even more than that. And
Yep.
the only way if that person can survive, I would say, yes, there are multiple opportunities, but the only way that they can grow is to have this thing of continuous learning, just to
Correct.
make sure that things are evolving. They evolve with the technology. And again,
Correct. Correct.
they may not, as you said, it could be learning once every month, once every 3 months, learning a technology or even a small bit. That
Correct.
eventually probably a good amount of learning if we think it from an year perspective, right? Over the year, they could be learning so many new things. So I would
Correct.
completely agree with all the points. And thank you very much.
One thing that just came to my mind, I think if you would like, you can join it with some of the previous responses. But one more key thing in actually going in this kind of a role is you have a deep understanding of the identity of domain.
Mhm.
But from a technical standpoint, right, you need to have at least a very high level understanding of other IT domains and other IT tracks. The reason why I'm saying is that, as I said earlier, sometimes the customers, they roll out proposal requests and they have 10 different requirements. One could be identity, one could be cloud computing, another could be infrastructure or something else. For us to respond as one single team, like we do at HCL Tech, we do have at least a high level of functioning knowledge about what other tracks are doing. And there are times where there is some sort of an overlap, authentication requirements, right? Authentication can be done through SSO, it could be done through some non identity solutions like network access control and stuff like that. So
Mm.
for you to ascertain that this kind of authentication requirement, whether it will be met by network access controls or it could be met by your identity based access controls, you need to have a functioning knowledge about how other domains work and a functioning knowledge of the feature functionalities offered by other domains.
Absolutely. Because as you rightly pointed out, a customer may be thinking about having an authentication system in place, but
Yes,
we simply cannot go and give them options around use Okta ping or something like that. What if
yes,
they are trying to authenticate their Wi-Fi solution,
correct,
which may not work with the standard protocol?
correct,
You have
correct.
things like radius and stuff, right? So
Yes,
again, yes, absolutely. And I believe this all boils down to, again, having that clear knowledge of customer requirement and the business case that they're trying to solve.
correct,
Because if one of the business cases gives seamless authentication experience for all my users who are using the guest Wi-Fi,
correct.
we will not think about a SSO solution or which is a cloud-based SaaS or these kind of SSO solutions. We'll simply think,
Exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
some authentication service that is more relevant to network level authentication. So
Yes.
I absolutely agree that how important knowledge of different domain is needed. And I think again, one thing that I would just want to add here is for anyone aspiring to be or get into IM roles, right?
Yep.
Whatever I would say you mentioned, these are a part of the journey that someone takes by gradually learning each and every bits, right? It's not necessary that everyone gathers all of this and only starts applying because there is so much thing to learn. So
Correct.
having a basic knowledge, I would say, and then gradually having that enthusiasm like you had when you were doing your MBA around knowing the customer, the business side of the world, even in IT. I think these kind of mindset would definitely help budding professionals, whether they are doing MBA or any other field wants to get
Yeah.
into pre-sales. So this brings us to the end of the first episode where we discussed about the roles and responsibilities, different hierarchy of being a pre-sales manager. And I would really want to thank you, Pulkit, for helping our audience and viewers go through your journey. It was really inspiring, and then it would really give that seed of knowledge to anyone aspiring to get into the IM field and also would want to consider pre-sales as one of the options.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.